This story is based on alleged accounts without concrete evidence and may be viewed as science fiction. It is presented for entertainment and discussion purposes only, and we do not endorse or support any claims made. Viewers should conduct their own research and form their own opinions. In previous episode, we discussed how DSD-3 spent a month bolstering its team to 70 members and meticulously preparing for combat in order to launch a direct assault on the 4th level. This involved engaging in battle with the Greys, who were situated on a lower level. Let's continue our discussion from there. In the 1956 battle, 200 Greys were killed while DSD-3 suffered minimal losses because they did not expect a sudden human attack. Inside the 4th level laboratory, there were over a dozen human corpses, including children, with no survivors. After this battle, the lower level Greys quieted down for a year until, at the request of U.S. officials, they reached an agreement that allowed them to abduct large mammals like cows but not humans. The lower-level Greys agreed to this agreement. In the 1970s, they started abducting humans again. But this time, DSD-3 did not intervene. It was not that they did not want to intervene, but at that time, there were already some dark elements within the human population, as I mentioned before, who did not consider ordinary people as their peers but rather as a resource to be traded. In the 1970s, all information regarding human disappearances and abductions was intercepted by AFSOI, and they did not share this information with DSD-3. Instead, they dismissed all of these cases as rumors spread by lunatics. The large number of cattle mutilations in the area also convinced DSD-3 that the lower-level Greys were abiding by the agreement. No one cared about the unfortunate farmers, even if they witnessed their property being taken by flying saucers, and were themselves labeled as crazy. At that time, the prevailing social sentiment in America was that UFOs were a form of religious dishonesty, so the public opinion was not favorable to these victims. In 1979, after the Grey told DSD-3 everything, the military decided that they had to respond again. They organized a force to attack the 4th level and destroyed the Greys' laboratory, but they could not save the abducted people. The lower-level Greys lay low for a few days before suddenly launching a counterattack on the upper-level human facilities. Because they did not anticipate this attack, the facility's staff suffered heavy losses, mostly scientists and engineers. Colonel, I have a question. Do you think you remember too much information as someone who only spent a few hours reading documents on a plane? When we arrived, the situation in the facility was very urgent, and we needed to complete the mission as quickly as possible. Originally, we were supposed to exchange the envelope with the Brigadier General, but I accidentally put a briefing document in my briefcase and did not put it back in the envelope. At that time, the situation was urgent, and the Brigadier General did not check the contents of the envelope. I did not intentionally hide the document, it was just a mistake. So, I did not discover that I had taken the briefing out of the envelope until after we left. About 3 weeks later, I received a recruitment offer from DSD-3, as the security officer had mentioned earlier. So, I did not actively return the document and left it in the facility when I retired. What did you do in DSD-3? As before, I was a psychology and behavioral consultant, and served as a liaison between the command center and DSD-3. This position gave me high authority, allowing me to access the scientist and DSD-3 personnel database directly. When I retired in 1983, I basically understood the past and present of the entire facility. Could you talk about your level of clearance? All members of DSD-3 have standard U.S. Department of Energy L clearances, and I have higher clearance to access sensitive information. This is a set of security systems developed by the U.S. National Security Agency, NSA, commonly known as Rhyolite clearance, which was used for early communication encryption systems. Other ordinary employees must have at least U.S. Department of Energy Q clearance, such as Phil Schneider, who had this level of clearance because he was responsible for excavating and transporting special materials, usually provided to us by the Greys. Why are you disclosing these secrets? It's because of my conscience. I had thought that the secrets of Area 51 would be made public in 2000, but they weren't. In 2001, there was a wave of UFO fever, and I attended some gatherings. But I didn't hear any reliable information. Even up until now, 2010. I still haven't heard any valuable revelations. Since retiring, I've maintained contact with some agents who inform me about the developments at Area 51. Unfortunately, since the 1990s, the dark elements have expanded, and the bottom-level Greys abduction activities are no longer being restrained. The shadow government is even interested in modifying human genes using Grey technology to create so-called super soldiers. Dissenters who are willing to cooperate are sent to the bottom level in exchange for more advanced technology weapons. In other words, the little humanity and morality that were left in Area 51 when it was first established have almost completely disappeared, and it is now just a trading platform for ambitious people and evil extraterrestrials. Although Phil Schneider's story had many inaccuracies, I still supported him and wanted to use his story as a means of conveying some truth to the public. I met him in Denver in 1995, but I didn't tell him that I was a member of DSD-3, because if I had, he would never have agreed to meet me. Instead, I lied and told him that I was an FBI agent willing to help him with his revelations. He agreed. Have you met Phil Schneider in private? Yes, in August 1995. I contacted him by phone and asked to meet with him privately. He refused, but I tried to persuade him by saying that I knew something about Area 51, and that I wasn't interested in his stories about Val Thor, the Philadelphia experiment, and Al Bielek. He finally believed that I was also an insider and agreed to meet me. Val Thor is a purported extraterrestrial being who is claimed to have visited Earth in the mid-20th century. According to the stories, Val Thor claimed to be from the planet Venus. He is said to have arrived on Earth in a flying saucer and made contact with a group of American military officials at the Pentagon in 1957. I told him that I had worked for the FBI and had also worked at the headquarters of Area 51. But I didn't mention DSD-3 because I didn't want to reveal my military background and make him uneasy. I wanted to help him by providing more information. After chatting for a while, I found that his mental state was somewhat unstable, and what he said was too vague and elusive, to the point where I almost couldn't believe that he had worked at Area 51 if not for seeing the list. And verifying some of the details he mentioned, I would have thought he was crazy. I guess his poor condition was related to the blonde woman who had been with him all the time. She claimed to be a reporter for a radio station. But when I asked a friend within the CIA to verify her identity, there was no record of her. Phil was nervous and said that someone was trying to silence him, and that he was being followed and monitored. It took me several days to gain his trust. One night, as we were leaving a restaurant, a man approached us and asked to see our IDs and claimed to be a CIA employee. I didn't believe him, and he pulled out a gun and tried to shoot us, but I was prepared and shot him down. It was only then that Phil Schneider fully believed that I was also an insider and agreed to work with me on revealing information in the long term. The incident with the CIA was completely covered up, and there was no news coverage. I realized that I was also in danger at that time, so I focused on changing my identity, and not long after, Phil died. Colonel, aren't you afraid of being killed when you disclose so much information? My life has completely changed. I have a new name, a new face, and a new life. My job in the Dulce is not meaningless. Some government officials are willing to help me hide my identity. I have changed my identity many times to ensure absolute safety. My family doesn't know my true past. They think I was an orphan adopted by European immigrants, but all of this is fake. Our mutual friend is also the same. We, the whistleblowers, have formed a small circle. We know how to protect ourselves, and that is to never trust anyone. I can openly disclose information to you about the West Road, even if someone discovers my identity when I joined the army. It is difficult to trace me to where I am now. So, was Phil also killed? Of course, anyone with judgment knows that his death couldn't have been a suicide. When he mentioned his clearance level as Q level in rhyolite, he had already been located by DSD-3. His death was not because of leaking information, but because he shouldn't exist in this world. For the contractors in the Dulce, Level 3 in rhyolite is a reasonable security clearance level. When this information was fed back to DSD-3, they checked the personnel list from 1979 and confirmed that Phil was one of the missing members. This is actually a huge mystery. When I communicated with him, he couldn't explain what happened in 1979, and he insisted that he was injured while excavating and then sent to the hospital. I don't know where these memories came from, but they don't match the actual situation at that time. In fact, I think DSD-3 didn't figure out how he died and was resurrected because these missing persons were probably dealt with by the lower-level Greys. Even if he could escape from the Greys' clutches, he couldn't directly leave the Dulce facility because it was closed for a period of time. If he really escaped, he should have sought help from DSD-3 or his employer first. These organizations wouldn't kill him to silence him, but would protect him. But he didn't. He disappeared for more than a decade, and suddenly came out to blow the whistle. Why did this happen? So I speculate that the Greys let him go, but I can't understand the reason. Later, I found out that the blonde woman who had been with him was indeed a special agent of DSD-3, but she joined in the 1990s. So we didn't know each other. Moreover, my contact with Phil did not attract the attention of DSD-3 because my friend helped me cover up the matter. Some people on the internet now think that Phil Schneider's content about rhyolite clearance is a lie. I must clarify that this is one of the few truths he said, and it was because of this detail that DSD-3 paid attention to it. Only those who have worked in the Dulce can hear it, because this clearance was set for these address engineers of the contractors, all of whom work under the ECHO, the Enhanced Communications and High Traffic Observation System developed by DSD-3. Could you elaborate on ECHO? DSD-3 uses this system to monitor all telephone, radio, fax, and network communications. This is a complex surveillance system developed by the National Security Agency, NSA, that can intercept all sensitive information to ensure there is no leakage. This system has been promoted to many underground bases, including Pine Gap Joint Defense Space Research Facility, Raven Rock, Mount Weather, Peri, Mount Pony, Manzano, China Lake, Groom Lake, and Tehachapi. These rhyolite clearance levels are also part of the NSA's system. The level 3 that Schneider mentioned means that he could access the first to third levels. They usually enter the third level to receive special materials provided by the Greys in the lower levels. Can you explain what a geologist like Schneider primarily does for work? There are some special rocks and metals there that are said to have been left over from the primordial era. They can be used to synthesize many advanced materials. We cannot control the synthesis process, which is controlled by the lower-level Greys. They only provide us with finished products. For example, they provided us with a special alloy material that can be used for stealth design in fighter jets. Phil Schneider demonstrated that material, claiming it was element 140. But it was actually an alloy material provided by the Greys. I don't know how he managed to get it out. In addition to minerals, mining is also their job. And because of the nuclear reactors, these mines must ensure that there are no safety issues. I think you should understand. Colonel, I have another question. There is an exaggerated claim on the internet that the Dulce is controlled by a group of reptilians and gray aliens who have kidnapped a large number of humans for experiments or consumption. Is this not correct? I have seen these stories, and there is truth to them, such as kidnapping and cannibalism, but the degree has clearly been exaggerated many times over. We'll be continuing this conversation in the next episode, so stay tuned for more.